Well, thank you very much for having me and giving me the opportunity. Thank you, everybody, for your smiling faces this morning. I would like to start with a recitation that I use in all of the services that I typically lead. And it's a way of dedicating our intention and our time. And if we're in a space, especially that isn't specifically dedicated for Buddhist practice, it helps to dedicate that as well. So all I need you to do for this part is just listen in. We dedicate this time and place to the three jewels, to the Buddha, the ideal of enlightenment to which we aspire, to the Dharma, the path of the teaching that we follow, to the Sangha, the spiritual fellowship with one another that we enjoy. Here may no idle word be spoken. Here may no unquiet thoughts disturb our minds. To the observance of the 5 precepts, we dedicate this place. To the practice of meditation, we dedicate this place. To the ripening of wisdom, we dedicate this place. To the joy of awakening, we dedicate this place. Though in the world outside there is strife, here may there be peace. Though in the world outside there is hate, here may there be joy. Here gathered, here practicing, may our minds become Buddha, may our thoughts become Dharma, may our speech together become Sangha, for the happiness of all beings, for the benefit of all beings, with body, speech, and mind, we dedicate this place. And I like to also think as reciting that, dedicating ourselves personally. You know, that when we especially get to the part of though in the world outside, you know, there is hate. Here may there be joy. Right? And so, anyway, it's a great way to set intention and set mindset. I would like to lead us into a meditation to start off our day here before I talk. And so I will ring the bell I have here 3 times to start. After the 3rd ring, I'll give some instruction and reminders for seated meditation. If you haven't already, please make sure you're on mute. And then after the instruction, we'll sit the remainder of the time in silence until I ring the bell again to signal the end of meditation. For seated meditation, find a stable posture that allows you to be as relaxed as possible while still being alert. To this end, it is helpful to sit with a straight, upright back, straight but not stiff. To get a good relaxed straightness, you can stretch upward, reaching toward the ceiling with the top of the head, and then relax down from that. To make sure that you are upright and not leaning in any direction, you can sway gently side to side and back and forth to find your center of balance. If you are seated on the floor, make sure that your knees are supported. If you are seated in a chair, it's helpful to keep the feet flat on the floor rather than tucked underneath or extended in front of you. If your feet do not reach the floor, place something under them so that your legs are not pulling on you with their weight. However you are seated, make sure that your posture and your clothing allow for your belly to expand freely when you inhale. If they do not, then adjust your posture or loosen your clothing as needed. Rest your arms in some way on your legs, whether on your knees or your thighs, so that they are not pulling on your shoulders with their weight. It's helpful to keep the mouth closed, with the tongue on the roof of the mouth. Eyes can be open or closed, whichever is comfortable. If you close them, take care that you do not fall asleep. If you leave them open, don't stare intently at anything. Don't chase anything around the room with the eyes. Simply gaze down and forward with a soft, relaxed focus. If at any point your posture becomes unstable or unbearable, then go ahead and adjust it. Just do so as quietly and unobtrusively as possible to avoid disturbing others. When you breathe, breathe deeply down into the belly, expanding the stomach outward when you inhale. Breathe out completely, contracting the stomach inward when you exhale. But do this in a relaxed manner, without forcing the breath. Simply be attentive to breathing all the way down in and all the way back out, and allow the body to find its own speed and rhythm. With the body settled and the breath regulated, we turn our attention to our practice of training our mind. Our practice here is to train our mind to experience this present moment as it is, free of judgment, free of expectation. When we find ourselves drifting into thoughts of the past or the future, we bring our attention back to this moment and what is happening right now. When we find ourselves drifting into judgment or expectation, any thought or idea that this moment should be happening other than the way that it is, we simply let that go and we observe this moment as it is. In this way, we function much like a mirror or a still body of water, which reflects only what is in front of it at the moment, not what was or what will be. and which reflects things as they are without adding to or taking away from them. It can be helpful to have some focus for our attention, some anchor we can hold on to when we find ourselves swept up into thought. Our breath is an excellent tool for this, as it is always with us and it is always happening right now. When we find ourselves swept from this moment or into judgment, we can bring our attention back to the breath, following it in through the nose, down into the body, and then back up and out again. If it helps, we can count the breaths quietly to ourselves. Each time we exhale, we can think one after the first breath, two after the second, and so on up to 10. If we make it to 10 without getting distracted and losing count, we simply return to 1 and begin again. If we get distracted and lose count, as soon as we realize that that has happened, we simply return to 1 and begin again. Either way, we do this without judgment. There is no reward for making it to 10, and there is no punishment for losing count. This is simply a tool to help us return our attention back to the present moment again and again, as often as we need to. If you have another still, silent practice that you prefer, please feel free to do that now. But we will sit now quietly until I ring the bell to signal the end of the meditation. Thank you, everybody, for sharing in that time of silence with us. I'd like to share some thoughts this morning about humility and uh, probably one of the most key points that I'd like to share is that the idea of humility is not about setting boundaries, but about recognizing boundaries that already exist, and not about thinking that those boundaries are uh, meant to restrict us, but simply to reflect the edge of our experience. And we can have a tendency to set boundaries and think, I can't do this, or I don't know this, or can't know this. Whereas recognizing that it's simply the edge of our experience is more akin to saying, I can't do this yet or currently, or I don't know this yet or currently, but I can push the boundary beyond that. The Think of it like making a map as you're exploring new territory. The boundary of the map doesn't mean that that's the edge of the world. It just means that's the edge of your experience. That's as far as you have been thus far. And humility is about recognizing and being honest about that. Being honest is that this is what I know so far. This is what I've experienced so far. Beyond that is what I don't know yet, what I haven't experienced yet. And humility is about recognizing that and about not being dishonest about it, not not playing up, that we know more than we do, or that we understand or have the best or most knowledgeable experience about something that we have experienced. Because another aspect of this is recognizing that since change is the very nature of things, and our perceptions are limited, even something we think we know pretty well or have a fairly thorough experience of, we can later learn to be incomplete or incorrect, or simply to have changed from the time we learned it or the time we experienced it. A lack of humility, a false humility, is to downplay what we know with the idea that I shouldn't I shouldn't be honest about what I'm capable of and what I've experienced, because that just uh, it seems egoistic. Well, egoistic would be being dishonest about it or offering it where it's not been asked for, or where it's not needed, where we have this fairly new term, mansplaining, and an older term, know-it-all, that both capture this idea. It's like, let me tell you everything that I know about this topic, even though you didn't ask, and you might even be a better expert at it than I am, because I'm going to exercise my lack of humility to school you right now, and so uh, that's a lighthearted uh, risk of having a lack of humility, but a more real risk is that if we think that we know more than we do, or if we think that we know best about a situation or a topic, and are unwilling to accept new or revised information, then we can start to suffer. As if we've already drawn this part of the map, and so we know exactly how to get where we're going, and we ignore the fact that a rock slide covered part of the road, or a flood washed out a bridge or whatnot, and we're going to suffer because we fail to account for changes in circumstances, or the fact that maybe we mismapped it. Somebody comes to us and says, I explored that region a little better, and I think it's going to take you more time if you go the way that you're talking about going. Where we can extend this suffering to others, and often do, is when we are in any kind of position of authority over other people, whether it's as a parent, a teacher, a leader of some kind, and we don't have a humility about the limits of our knowledge and experience, and simply think, I know what's best for everybody in this group, or for whoever it is that I'm leading at this moment. And so we're going to do that without without taking any feedback, without adapting to change, without demonstrating a simple, honest assessment of our circumstances. And in the meditation instruction that I do, I talk about a key part of our practice is observing where we are, what we're doing, and what's happening right now without any judgment. Simply just observing and figuring out what is our current circumstance. And humility is doing exactly that all the time. It's about observing the circumstance and being aware, honestly aware, without any judgment of whether it's good or bad, whether we have more or less than we should about it, but simply observing and assessing our situation so that we can proceed in the most effective way to proceed without causing suffering and even to reduce and stop suffering that already exists. Now, the one of our 10 Mahayana precepts, the seventh one, is about this very thing. In our chant book here says, I resolve not to praise myself and disparage others, but to overcome my own shortcomings. I've often seen this worded as I vow to cultivate humility as well. Again, an honest assessment, a simple, honest observation of what's happening, what do we know, what can we do, and then proceeding forth from that. I want to take a side note to talk about the word expert, because this often comes up in situations of humility being dismissed or disregarded. The word expert comes from the same root as the word experience. And an expert in any given situation is literally just the person who has the most experience in that particular area. And that is it. And to use a dramatized example, if you have a plane that has to make a crash landing, and there are survivors, including the captain and the pilot, and after the landing, everybody just turns to the pilot and says, "What do we do now?" Well, the pilot may no longer be the expert. The pilot was the expert while you were in the plane and flying, but maybe he's not the best at surviving now that you're on the ground, and you need to turn to somebody else in the group who may know more. But we have a tendency to think and create this idea that somebody's an expert, often about ourselves, but about other people as well, that they're an expert in everything or everything about a particular situation, when it's rarely the case that you'll have somebody in a group who is good at everything that group is going to do. Okay? And you'll never have a case where you have somebody in a group who's good at everything or who knows everything about even a very specific topic. So being honest about recognizing expertise, continually reassessing expertise in any group settings, like we're going to do this now. Who knows how to do this or who has experience in doing this? And being humble, having enough humility to, if you were the leader of the previous activity, being able to let go of that and say, oh, I'm no longer the expert here. Somebody else has greater expertise, and so we shall defer to them for what we do next. And this is the approach that the best teachers, the best leaders end up doing, is they recognize what they're skilled at, what they're good at, and what they know, and work from that, and recognize that what they don't know, other people will know that, and call upon those people as resources, and even defer to them to be the expert of the situation, depending on what it is. For our own practice, learning when we do that is key. Just this paying attention. What do I know? How can I keep expanding my knowledge of what I know? What is my experience? How can I keep expanding my experience? How can I correct my knowledge or my experience with new information as it's presented, or just deeper study or more extended practice. And so that I can navigate life, I can make this map the best map it can be at every given point for me and anybody else who's going to use the map. And so that was those are my thoughts on humility and recognizing our limitations, not as hard and fast boundaries, but as something to explore and learn beyond. So thank you, everybody, for listening to my ramblings. I think I'll see if Tai Kozen has anything now.
Well, thank you, Venerable Jeff. Such a lovely talk this morning. Thank you, thank you. I'm going to stop the recording.